Okay. Hello, everyone. All right. So, welcome everybody. The title of today's episode is "The Soul is a Team," and I've created the term the Solar Team. And pretty much I realized something. I made notes of it yesterday, and today's episode is going to be very interesting because I'm sharing an idea I haven't shared before. And that's, in some sense, I've written here, groups of beings are providing the energy so we can be their experience. So, I'm trying to think how to speak about this. There are people on the planet right now. There's 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. If we look at what has happened from an aerial view, we are noticing that there wasn't the earth, and the earth came around, and then creatures came around, and then these creatures had no idea they were separate from the world, and then they realized they're separate from the world. Mankind's universe, the human being's reality, is created through separation. We separated from the existential event, complete existential. I shouldn't say existential event, but we experientially separated ourselves from a process where all existence is happening through. So what's going on is that existentially, really, there isn't that much choice. I shouldn't say choice, but I mean, like, everybody is existing. I'm not talking about cultural, social conditions, but I'm saying in regards to conscious experience, everybody's existing. And it is your mind that discriminates between your experience and your existence, your inner experience and your outer existence. Now, for someone to start talking about like the idea of the soul from a multidimensional perspective, there's been different ideas, but I don't know, last night it occurred, oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, this looks like a good ambient album. Yeah. What a song. Oh my god. The traditional view was body, mind, soul. The soul was 100% unknown. The body was like 100% known, and the mind was semi-known, semi-unknown. Our mind is the bridge between the dimensions of our existence and our experience. Our mind is a space. Now, I was looking at this and I was like, why is it that, some human beings... Let me say something that a friend of mine years ago said to me to try to make me doubt myself. Okay. I remember before the Mr. Within talks 2014, I was pretty much from 2000, like end of 2011 to from the end of 2011 to 2014, I completely transformed, and I was writing. Like, I would pretty much wake up in the morning, put the laptop on a chair in front of me, press the record button, and then just in that just woken up state, I would just automatically speak. And through that process, in like a very short time, I managed to create like like 10 technical books, kind of like through an automatic writing fashion. At the time, I had a close friend of mine, I won't tell you his name, but this friend of mine came up to me and said, what if like there's a being, like imagine like there's a demon, and this demon throws a rock at you, and you feel something spiritual is happening, and so you start communicating with the demon, and you think like it's the demon is like truth or something, right? He was trying to say that it's like, what if you're being interdimensionally deceived? Okay. Now, certain cultures are different. Right now in 2023 in the Western world, the superstition of ancient times, or the multidimensionality that they acknowledge, is in some sense being reduced. Okay. So right now we're living in how do I say it? For example, if you were born in the 6th century and you were introduced, for example, to religion, right? Like, how would I say it? So many ideological systems, like, okay, here. I know of one religious book that is acknowledging in the religious book, like the religious book was intended for mankind and something else. Okay, there has been so many, like, I mean, it's not a far-fetched idea. We look at how many different kinds of animals there are, how many different kinds of plants there are, and when it comes to intelligence of a dynamic level, it's like we don't consider that there's others. You know. Anyways, I'm just trying to point out that back in the day there was way more of an interdimensional real acknowledgement. You know, there was an multidimensional acknowledgement of reality. Nowadays we don't consider that. Imagination has been rendered as like fiction, and we don't care. You know, we don't think it's real, and it's strange. You know, we're like subjects moving objects, but the object doesn't believe it's a subject. It doesn't believe it's a non-physical being. What is an idea? What is your idea? Your idea is a non-physical sense of being. The idea of you. Now, this is the main point of this talk I'm going to say now. Pretty much I was thinking that what if this traditional view that there's a transmigratory soul, it's like you're a single soul and you're going from lifetime to lifetime, do you know, and it's like an infinite school, this reality. Some people have that perspective. So think of it this way. I'll use myself as an example. Pretty much I noticed, like, wait a minute, why is it that like some beings suddenly bad things happen to them, like repeatedly? Why are some beings good things happening to them? What is even the nature of the work of this idea of the soul, or like the, you know, prime life force? And so I thought myself as an example where I'm like, okay, So let me instead of thinking that I'm an individual invisible soul, let me just entertain that if in this lifetime, out of all the things I could do, I am suddenly giving podcasts and constantly being drawn and pulled to giving these talks, right? It's as if, imagine my soul being a group of beings that get entertained or enjoy communication. Do you know? And imagine somebody who's evil. There's a group of beings that is acting as their soul, and in some sense those group of beings are enjoying every time this guy does something evil. Do you know? What I am saying is the jurisdiction of man's mind, unfortunately, when it comes to higher dimensions, unless he finds a higher self, he will not acknowledge. So what is going on in this world is that we started off as being nothing to ourselves. Then we became singular. Then we entered duality. In duality, in some sense, civilization arose. And now people are in some sense wondering like, yo, should I think life is nothing? Does the value, give it a value 0? Should I think life is singular, one ultimate oneness? You know, should I give it that value? Or should I give it in some sense a dualistic value till the end of time, chaos and order will fight, you know? Or in some sense, should we acknowledge the presence of the infinite? Those who in some sense have gone through all the conditions of manifestation to realize that they are the world, not what's in it. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Oh, how the world has forgotten itself. The roar of man in the void, that is the divinity. Do you know, I feel like our species is a lion. Do you know, and this lion thinks it's a sheep, and it has been pushed by all forces. But suddenly, this is what I call the advanced humanity. This strength will arise in the species. And in some sense, everything, it's like, what's his name? Milarepa, this Tibetan monk sage, has this quote. He says, you only throw a stick at a lion once. Because if you throw it again, you won't exist. The lion will devour you. And so the nature of mankind is that the forces of the unknown are, in some sense, how would I say it? Based on the type of mind you have, you can in some sense turn this world into your enemy. Or you can turn it into your greatest ally. Because everything has an interest. How would I say it? Everything has a sort of any force. Imagine like suddenly somebody pushes someone, the intent was to move. And so if force and intelligence is present in the void, it is here to move things. But now what is the authority of movement? And so this is very bizarre. Because if you go into your inner realms and you watch how your mind moves in front of you, there will come a moment where you will be like, who are you moving in front of me? You will question your own mind. You will wonder, where are you? What is this? And this force starts slowly reminding you. I don't know. I feel that maybe the fact that we think we're just individuals and everything's being individual is just, you know, this dimension's kind of architecture. Beyond this realm, how do we know there are not beings of a non-physical nature, of a non-physical magnitude? How do we know space is not conscious? Or I shouldn't say conscious. How do we know space is not aware? You see, we have conditioned ourselves that if the form is not there, the life force doesn't consider it real. That means think of how advanced of a being you have to be, that you stare at the void as an eternal being and then manifest universes. What this means is that space knew before man could. The space where man is in. It's as if we are in the mind of a greater being. And if you conceptualize this being, you have denied yourself that being. The secret of this world is presence. Because whatever happens to you, you end up being in some state. Now, if you're materialist, of course, after death, you end up being void. You know, for me, I thought, like, what is this? You know, materialist, secular people are like, we started from the void and we're going to return to the void. Religious people are like, we started from the one God and we return to the one God. And dualistic people are like, yo, this world just keeps going. You know, and infinite beings are in some sense bored of their own identities. When I say the soul is a team, I am opening up for this discussion, this metaphysical discussion, that we begin wondering that what if an individual's ability, like you know, sometimes I have thought, you know, okay, here, I'll say this. There was a moment in my life where I felt in potentially I had one past life on earth, and I felt that I was looking through the eyes, not as one of the beings looking through the eyes of Rishi Vyasa. There was a time I felt like, in some sense, that beings are not individuals. That means, like, right now as I'm speaking, the viewers are like, yeah, it's one soul, one guy, you know, just giving a talk. But what if, as I am speaking, behind my eyes there is an audience? What if every concept that is empowered in the moment requires the energy for it? It's as if higher dimensional beings, if they are beyond matter, the closest thing they can become to us is an idea. Right now we're at a point where not all I would say, like, very few human beings are capable of being able to communicate to an inner archetype in the sense that they retain their original place. So what I mean by this is that I say this to anybody who goes into mysticism or altered states or whatever you're doing. You know, be human first, and then as you please. Because to be human means that this is our starting point. It's our headquarters in any sort of transcendental activity. It's our base. Humanism is the base, is the headquarters for this being that's understanding, you know, the multidimensionality of reality. So when I say the soul is a team, this is a very important suggestion, because the idea is saying, what if you are not an individual? What if you are a collective? That means right now as I'm giving this talk, imagine like a million beings from another galaxy are like looking through my eyes or something. You know, I'm just saying, this is fiction, but I'm hypothetical. But I'm saying, like, when it comes to that unknown witnessing force, that which is looking through our eyes, or as the Upanishads say, the seer of the seen is unseen. So when one realizes that something within them is unknown and looking out through their eyes, and so it accepts the conditions and then defines itself. But if it doesn't accept the world it is in, what is it? Do you know, like, I see it on a physical level. For example, let's say you take celebrities, right, like musicians, right? You see that musician creates music, and then like millions of people go to the concert of that musician. It's as if the group's identity is being animated in accordance to the performer on stage. Really, why human beings become entertained, I guess, through a sort of trust in animation outside of themselves. So, this idea that, you know, I mean, I treat it playfully, that I just felt like I was one of the beings that were looking through Rishi Vyasa's eyes. But that idea is, in some sense, like, if I were to say it now, it's as if we are living through each other. The dimensions are living through each other. It's a symbiosis of dimensions. That what that means is that disembodied and embodied are living together. But the embodied don't notice the disembodied. What that means is mankind is a bit naked in the higher dimensions. You might have clothing, you might have a lot of stuff, right? Like a lot of like status, power, and all of this. You're sitting in your mansion, do you know? But when it comes to beyond this realm, you require to cultivate an ability. And these Mr. Within talks are here to say, hey guys, everybody's heading to the unknown. It makes sense to try to wonder directly and experientially about what the unknown is now. And part of this unknown framework, you know, it's like the unknown is kind of like the blank canvas of knowledge. I mean, space is the blank canvas of knowledge, but the unknown is space's true form, true being, not form, true being. That means, has the human being ever considered that it is not a creature, even though it appears to be? But what if we are not creatures here? For example, I close my eyes as a, I'm a writer. As I close my eyes and I imagine, I try to create a world, try to create a universe. And imagine I create a universe that looks like Earth, but instead of the trees being like, let's say, brown and green, instead it's like the opposite, the leaves are brown, the trees are green. Do you know what I'm saying? So in my inner realms, I can start a universe. And now I imagine somebody like climbing this tree. So I have closed my eyes as a human being. In my inner realms, I opened up a universe, a universal server, and then I positioned into it phenomena, form, and then I created a character in that universe. And now, as a mystic, I am like, what if the character in my imagination notices I am imagining it? What if man's connection to the divine is to realize the divine is our presence? Because what is moving in the void? We have been looking for God, but something is moving in the void. Everything moving. It's like how the divine breathes. When the divine inhales, universes arise. And imagine when the divine exhales, universes are dismissed. I think it's possible. I think that it could be that what happens to the human being, if the human being doesn't understand why it happened to them, or in some sense, when it comes to certain emotions, I am very sensitive to my inner realm. So when I have a thought appear out of my mind, I'm like, what has entered my space? What has entered my room? And when I have emotions are very interesting, because emotions are when your past sense of self's incompleteness is being re-recognized in the present. A person becomes emotional simply because their inner reality and outer reality are not in sync. That means the world they see behind their eyes and the world and what's happening in front of their eyes are not aligned. So they have this. So the being, if a person, what a ridiculously happy advertisement. So I'm saying, let's say I have this attitude that what we've tried before, we should put our attention on what we haven't attempted before. If we think that a soul, like in Shintoism, it's even more next level. In Shintoism, they have this view that all matter is a vessel for a highway of souls, like an infinite highway of souls. Right? That means like some traditions, they're like, yo, I'm one soul, and some other traditions, the person's like, soul, I am like the infinite intelligence of the universe moving through me from another dimension. You know what that means? That's like a cup. Okay, imagine you put a cup and you turn on the water tap and the cup becomes filled completely and over pours and the tap is on, right? And so it's like, that's like the human being. Okay, if you identify with the cup, you're a human being. There's nothing, you're just the stuff here, but if you identify with what is being poured within, because sometimes for me, I'm like, okay, am I here to just be a freaking existential, like a statue made of the periodic table, or is there something else? Could it be that the world is trying to show us something? That's what I feel. I feel like the universe, like if there's an intelligence to the universe, that's the tour guide. I'm the tourist in this world. And part of the tourism map, part of the tourism schedule is birth, middle, and then death. That's it. We're travelers here. But if interdimensionally, let's say, I don't know. I have, even though in these Mr. Within talks, I tell the viewers, do not create a personality, do not create a deity figure or something in your mind, because you're going to get attached to the invisible personality you consider in your mind. So if you don't want to get attached to personality, then you have to have an approach to your experience that is not just persona-based. The persona is the individualization of reality. Okay, it's the persona. It's a concept presented by Carl Jung, and the persona means mask. It's one of the major archetypes. So every person that's being a self is in some sense wearing a mask. Now, what I'm saying in this episode is, what if it's not one person wearing the mask? What if it's the whole universe wearing the mask? You know? You know, there was a time, I'm going to share with the viewers a story. This story has to do with Buddha. And Buddha, I mean, Gautama Siddhartha, Prince Siddhartha, I don't know if many people know his story. I think pretty much everybody should know, at least how he looks like. Buddha was born at a time, okay, so he was pretty much this kid. He was born in this, his father was an emperor, right? And then he has this birthmark of a wheel or something underneath his foot, the Buddha. And so the king, the emperor says, yo, bring me a holy man. And the holy man comes there, and the emperor says, holy man, tell me, what will my son be? Tell me the destiny of my son. In Indian culture, that was, fortune telling was, natural back in the day, So, and then this holy man says, your son, the guy's super smart. He gives like the perfect answer. He says, your son is either going to be like a spiritual king, like a spiritual authority, or he's going to be an emperor like you. And then the king's like, okay, I didn't like the first part of your answer, but I like the second part of your So Buddha is raised in this palace, which is a metaphor for a simulation. Buddha's father doesn't want Buddha to be exposed to suffering, because if he finds suffering, he's going to notice deeper things than just being an emperor. Do you know? So anyway, some time passes. Buddha had this assistant buddy named Ananda. Okay? And so one day, Buddha and Ananda, they leave, Ananda, somehow they sneak out of the palace, and Buddha for the first time sees that, holy shit, people get sick, people die. There's so many different types of suffering. He just notices suffering. He notices, like, it's not a theme park. It's like there's some parts of it where the theme park doesn't work. Do you know? So Buddha decides, and to me this is where he becomes a genius, because he decides to solve the hardest problem in reality. He is fearless in his approach to want to solve the biggest of mysteries. How to surpass suffering. And so at the time, there was Brahmanism. And Brahmanism meant ritualism. People were doing so many weird rituals. Like nowadays, some people may feel religious rituals are weird, they may think like societal, shadow societal rituals are weird, But back in the day, everybody was doing these rituals as a way of connecting to God, because they had not understood that your inner realms need to change. That means a being needs to do rituals because in their inner realm they can't change. So in some sense, all those beings who are doing some, in some sort of ritualism, right? I'm telling you, you're stopping yourself. You're literally like you're stopping being yourself. Because it's an inner shift. An inner shift, it doesn't matter in the outer realms. Now somebody be like, okay, what if there's a ritual where you slap someone in the face and they get enlightened? In the future, imagine some guy comes and his name is Slap Guru. Right? And everybody comes, and he just slaps them, and they're like, thank you, enlightened guru, I see all my, fallacies and problems now, I just needed somebody to slap me. I don't know, I think about reality, I think about where the individual is going, I think about myself as an individual, as an object and a subject, and an awareness that is holding both of them. I wonder where all of this is going. I think about how the world is alive, I think about how I'm alive, I think about the separation or the inseparability of how the world is alive and I'm alive. And so it could be that mankind is here to in some sense have faith in the presence of what is being everything. That seems to make sense. Why wouldn't you trust everything? Like, how many people on the planet are there that they can trust everything? Like, that's an incredible question, no? And I think the only way you can trust everything is if you're selfless, because if you're a sense of self, the trust is conditional. We have to realize that the human species is enchanted. It has been enchanted by ideological and linguistic systems, by language. And language is so powerful that it can authorize and unauthorize a soul to itself. That's the power of language. And it's incredible because we're such advanced beings. We're like, yo, the physical wasn't enough. Yo, let's imagine. I mean, it's one of the deepest philosophical questions. Are we imagining reality, or is imagination real? Or excuse me, are we imagining reality, or reality, or is imagination real? So that means, are we a non-fictional entity, treating ourselves as fiction so we have something to do in the void, or are we a fictional entity that is treating ourselves non-fiction to comprehend its own fiction better, I guess. I don't know. I thought about it like there's something called karma here. The concept of karma means that what is happening to you has to do with how you cause this for yourself. When the idea of karma is like cause and effect. So it's another way of saying if you're experiencing an effect of reality, you were the cause, but it might not have been the you that is present now. Do you know? There was a king who, in Vedic thought, this king was a next level, powerful king, and he had 3 sons, and all his 3 sons die. And this king goes to a holy man, I think he goes to Rishi Vyasa maybe, and he says, I don't know who he goes to. He goes to the sage, and he says, why is this happening to me? Right? I'm a king. I have been a righteous king. Do you know I have lived well? Do you know why is it that my legacy is being taken away from me? And so the sage says, king, do you remember your past lives? And the king in the story remembers only his last 3 past lives. Right? And then the king says, I remember these 3 past lives. And then the sage who's let's say he's experiencing reality from the eyes of his heart. What that means is the sage is pretty much a universal self. So the universal self of the sage tells the king that 1,000 lifetimes ago you were an archer and you killed this bird, and when you killed this mother bird, the 3 birdlings died. And this king goes into a shock, understanding you can be a king in a room, but you're not a king in the house of the world. There are way greater authorities beyond shape. Way greater authorities. There are even wars in space, but those are not conceivable to us. There's an evidence of it though. The evidence is the war of what do you call it? The Titans in Greek mythology. It's referred to as the battle of the gods and the Titans. In Vedic mythology, it's the battle of Asuras and Devas. And so it was the suggestion that it's a recording of a battle between immortal physical beings and eternal non-physical beings. Literally, it's a recording of a war between space and matter. Do you know? Now, all those conflicts of the ancient world was like they had a window open where that window has been closed now, I find. And so man is playing this game. So let me focus on this idea the soul is a team. Let's say somebody says, Mr. Within, no, I'm just a single soul going from lifetime to lifetime. I'm not a bunch of souls, I'm not the presence of the whole universe and all that. I'll be like, okay, but check this out. Even as an individual soul, you have entered a collective world. We have entered a world where if it was just meant to be our world, we would all be solipsists, right? That means it would be just our own universe and we'd be like, yeah, we're the God. We're the ones starting everything, do you know? But in some sense, we are in this world to realize that there is more than our mind. A lot of embodied physical beings, don't realize this. Or excuse me. It's like, what I'm saying is like, imagine an unknown being trying to forget itself. If a known being forgets itself, it becomes unknown. But if an unknown being forgets the unknown, it becomes a creature of knowledge, no? So it could be that we have experienced our minds before we were in our bodies, and when we are embodied, then it can play out. So what it means is that to be a human being is a visible tactic to an invisible strategy. We are the visible tactic. We are this phase of nature. We are the stewards of the planet in this era. If the idea of a team, so if the human being enters this world and there's, greatness is a team effort. So even if you're an individual, you have come into a place where there's collective experiences. So imagine in the future, the advanced humanity, children will cultivate mastery in their individual consciousness and in their collective awareness. There is a quote from Meister Eckhart where he says, "The same eyes I see God are the same eyes God sees me." There's another quote too, I'm looking for it. Meister Eckhart says, if the only prayer you ever say in your entire... I'm just going to go into a quote tunnel, guys. Meister Eckhart says, if the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Meister Eckhart says, Meister Eckhart is a Christian mystic from 1,000 years ago, guys. Meister Eckhart says there's a huge silence inside each of us that beckons us into itself, and the recovery of our own silence can begin to teach us the language of heaven. That silence is your presence. Once you acknowledge that presence, you will realize that presence is beyond human identity. And what I mean beyond human identity, because it's literally like first person, one-sided, looking out of the eyes as if they are the windows of the soul. So what is looking through the eyes, which we say soul, is a mysterious question mark, where if we use what is in front of our eyes to try to conceptualize it, it will become a story. So anybody who wants to, let's say, experience spirituality in the outer realms, you're you'd probably a story will consume you. But if in the inner realms you notice that there is moments of being before language, before you, like every human being, there was a moment in their childhood where they did not have language and they were just sight. They were just a child in a room, just a kid in a world, and then you became your name, your identity, and everything. Usually it happens by the age 12, 11, where they say the child accepts a sort of individualism, like it starts becoming conscious of its own individual identity. Not in the sense of just like saying the child's name and the child saying that. I mean in the sense of who the child thinks it is in the world that it's conceived. Meister Eckhart says, above all else, know this, be prepared at all times for the gifts of God, and be ready always for new ones, for God is 1,000 times more ready to give than we are to receive. Which means that this universe, religion, like, how would I say it? This universe is suggesting that if man is honest, the universe isn't selfish. Meister Eckhart says the only thing that burns in hell is the part of you that won't let go of your life, your memories, your attachments. They burn them all away, but they're not punishing you, they're freeing your soul. If you're frightened of dying and you're holding on, you'll see devils tearing your life away. If you've made your peace, then the devils are really angels freeing you from the earth. And what this means is the intent of your being and the type of emotions that your journey in this lifetime has given you. You as a being probably remember the journey of this lifetime, but before this lifetime, Earth was an individual. before the time, I don't know, in my inner realms I'm seeing as if like another universe was started inside a universe. It's like we're one of the layers of the onion if the universe was a vegetable. Guys, I'm seeing a name of a saint called Albertus Magnus. I'm going to read his quotes, but I have no idea who he is. Albertus Magnus says, the greater and more persistent your confidence in God, the more abundantly you will receive all that you ask. Albertus Magnus says, it is by the path of love, which is charity, that God draws near to man, and man to God. But where charity is not found, God cannot dwell. If then we possess charity, we possess God, for God is charity. What he means is that the divine is beyond greed. Albert Magnus says, I have never gone out to mingle with the world without losing something of myself. It's not that I wouldn't say it's not that you lose something of yourself, it's that you get added new things so you feel you're different than before. Albertus Magnus, banish therefore from thy heart the distractions of earth, and turn thine eyes to spiritual joys, that thou mayest learn at last to respond in the light of the contemplation of God. So what this means, in the light of the contemplation of God, this is an activating sentence. So what it means is that if you attempt in this lifetime to contemplate, to comprehend the origin of being, of how you are being before language changed you, before the world promised you different outcomes. That means it's like a being in a world and being like, I don't even know who I am, what am I? And then the whole universe pauses, as if the cosmos suddenly noticed those worthy to return. If humanity realizes that the original power that animated reality is this expansive, how many stars, how many galaxies, how big is this world? We are literally a single sand on the beach. Or a single snowflake on Everest. There's a philosopher called Al-Farabi. I'm going to read some quotes from him. An art which has an aim to achieve the beauty is called a philosophy, or in the absolute sense, it is named wisdom. Al-Farabi says, a just city should favor justice and the just, hate tyranny and injustice, and give them both their just deserts. Okay, that's all the quotes there is. There's a man named Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali is, when it comes to the Islamic universe, he's a wise figure. Al-Ghazali says, to get what you love, you must first be patient with what you hate. Al-Ghazali says, knowledge without action is wastefulness, and action without knowledge is foolishness. Yeah. You know, there's something interesting. They say some people listen to answer and some people listen to understand. This listening to understand, you can cultivate it. I personally cultivate it because when I do things, I just listen to a lot of lectures online. Just like instead of listening to music when I'm doing something, I listen to a lecture. I even put the music in the background of the lecture, like so the lecture is 100% volume, the music is 50% volume, and then both tabs are playing at the same time. By the way, anybody can play their favorite songs behind these talks, by the way, like if there is no music there. So anyways, Al-Ghazali says, declare let me see. Okay, so it says, Al-Ghazali says, he's speaking to Muslims. He's saying, declare your jihad on 13 enemies you cannot see. Egoism, arrogance, conceit, selfishness, greed, lust, intolerance, anger, lying, cheating, gossiping, and slandering. If you can master and destroy them, then we'll be ready to fight the enemy you can see. So pretty much these are afflictions. Al-Ghazali is saying that instead of thinking that, you have to fight a physical enemy, go destroy something physically, sometimes there are afflictions within yourself. It could be your egoism, it could be your arrogance. And let me tell you, anytime in this lifetime I have gone into these states, you feel different. The moment you do it, you feel different. The moment you know, like a part of you instantaneously knows, right? The moment you've intentionally done the greed, right? It's very strange. It's kind of like the greatest human beings have the capacity to be selfless or any self. That seems to be, that I see that as probable for a definition of an advanced being. Because let me tell you what is not advanced. Fear. Fear is not advanced. It's important, but it's not advanced. To be afraid means you're not alive. Or the inner realms don't trust the outer realms. This, to be a human being is very fascinating. If a human being is told to just emotionally do everything they emotionally like, they're going to suffer. I'm telling you. If somebody just has this impression that reality is about how you feel all the time, you're going to suffer a lot, because there's so many things that are necessary to do that have nothing to do with our emotions. They just must be done. Many great visions of advancement will guide humanity. The pilots are coming. The advanced communicators will arrive soon. It would be equivalent, if you're a religious person, to as if 50,000 angels are going to, visit Earth. Poetically, I'm saying this. Al-Ghazali says, desires make slaves out of kings, and patience makes kings out of slaves. Wow. Wow. There you go. If you're a king listening to me, your desires have made you a peasant of your own kingdom. Maybe. Because, guys, the thing is, it's all about dimensions of acknowledgement, right? Some human beings, they look at other human beings, they just see a physical creature. Some people look at another human being, they see a mental entity, a personality, memories, a type of free will administration, And there's some beings who look at a being and they see it in the context of how life is present. When you wonder about what is present, you cannot ignore the truth. And there's even people who, what's his name? Rene Descartes. He had this approach where it was a methodical doubt. So this dude was pretty much like, I'm going to doubt everything until I find truth. And he suddenly realized he cannot doubt the doubter. Therefore, mind-body dualism, there was a significance for that. Al-Ghazali says, do not allow your heart to take pleasure with the praises of people, nor be saddened by their condemnation. Yeah, he means that it's like let me tell you what happens, right? So when somebody, okay, I shouldn't, I'm speaking from observation, okay? I've observed it in the sense that I feel, how do I say it? It's kind of like, if you believe what others say, you're living, how do I say it? Pretty much it's Al-Ghazali saying, like, be careful you don't get egotistically possessed when somebody praises you or when you're upset by something. Like, I'll give you an example. Somebody could, let's say somebody's doing something and they experience a bit of difficulty and then they give up. Like, that's being possessed by, like, defeat. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how to say it. Like, you choose, you can at least choose how much you get affected, do you know, by what by what your attitude is acknowledging. Al-Ghazali says, those who look for seashells will find seashells. Those who open them will find pearls. This is another way of saying, you as a being, there will come a moment where, as the poet Rumi says, I have lived on the edge of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens, I have been knocking from the inside. What is within you is holding what is outside of you. Therefore, what is outside of you cannot just be outside of you. Al-Ghazali says, never have I dealt with anything more difficult than my own soul, which sometimes helps me and sometimes opposes me. This is why, guys, I keep saying in the talks, you know, your intelligence can become your ally, you know, but you must honor yourself. And you can't honor yourself by only your memories in this lifetime. You must honor it through the beauty of the presence of how majestic and grand this world is. Al-Ghazali says, if you see Allah, he says, if you see God mighty and magnificent, holding back this world from you, frequently trying you with adversity and tribulation, know that you hold a great status with him. Know that he is dealing with you as he does with his Aliyah and chosen elite, and is watching over you. And guys, an example of this is the story of Abraham. So what this means is that, dear viewers, have faith in how this world is animating. Have faith in the energy that is moving it. Have faith in how you are also an energetic being. And once you understand that your energy is not an idea, the smile of lifetimes into now, the smile of eons into now will arise, will appear. So I guess to end off this episode, what I'm telling the viewers is that it's an interesting idea that we, you know, philosophers of this realm, the philosophers of this universal sector, in some sense begin wondering about the nature of how individual we are actually behind our eyes. Because there's many opposing viewpoints that suggest that man is not just a physical entity, and it is physicalism that makes us feel we are individual. Our separate physicalism from the world, from the earth. Like trees might not identify as trees. Like, granted, you know, they're rooted in the soil of the earth. But a human being walking on the earth doing parkour on buildings, like, yeah. So anyways, thank you, dear listeners. It's just this idea that what if we're not an individual, and what if, like, pretty much this was the thing that drew me about this idea, that like I'm giving these talks, it could make sense that there's a group of beings that want to advance communication around me. Somebody is like, let's say, being a soccer player, it makes sense that there's a group of beings want to see like advancement in that area, right? So it could be that the advancement that our outer life goes towards, it's the advancement in some sense of what is behind us, what is our allies, you know? So what I'm trying to say is that treat your mind. Maybe in the future, there will be people who will treat their mind like cities, like worlds even. And what if, instead of there being many in front of us that stare at us, what if there are many behind our eyes that also stare at us? What if man was never alone, for he was the main event of this universal sector? We are the advanced communicators of this realm, and advanced communication means you realize you're the most advanced communication of the universal sector. Because we cannot build an advanced civilization if it's not advanced from the beginning. Some victories must be had behind our eyes. I remember Sun Tzu in The Art of War. Let me see. Okay, whatever. somebody might say, Mr. Within, what does that mean? Are you saying like a group of beings from another dimension are like using us as vehicles of experience? I would say it's not, I don't know, it's strange, because I think about the permission of individualism in the void, and I think about the permission of collectivism. And then I think about the permission of the collective to notice the individual, and the individuals to notice the collective. I mean, to me it feels like if we are individual, we are destined to experience the collective. If we're collective, I mean, the individualism is left. So it could be that man is in some sort of transcendental evolutionary chart, you know, where he's being inside a world, then he is becoming the world, and then he's becoming beyond the world. So what this means is responsibility level. For example, human beings have the responsibility level of their biological body, and let's say certain amounts of their inner realms. If you're like a family man, you're being responsible for other beings as well. But imagine the responsibility of a being that has to consciously keep its concentration to administer a galaxy. So what that means is its responsibility levels of being, and there is ridiculous amounts of beings that once their responsibility level, it's another way of saying they have understood the world to a degree that they no longer need to stand under it. Whoever you are, wonder about the most advanced possibilities of reality. Why else are we here? Thank you for listening. Share, subscribe, comment, like, join. And as a question, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the solar. So pretty much this idea, I'm calling it the solar team. SOULAR. I thought that's like the solar team, right? So the soul, and then we have the solar team, right? Which is kind of like the group experience of the soul of itself. Thank you for listening. Rise, mankind, rise.